In this demonstration you will learn how to refactor the SAML code in the main window so that you can create a user control for the part that is showing the customers. Let's switch to Visual Studio. Here I've started the customers application. Now this part here with the navigation and with the customer details should be extracted into a user control. To do this, you need to prepare some things in the main window SAML file. So let's stop the application. As you can see on the root grid, you have defined here the 3 column definitions. These column definitions are only needed by that part that shows the customers. When you scroll down, you can see here the grid with the customer list that is in grid row 2 of the root grid. Let's collapse this. Here is the stack panel for the customer details that is also in grid row 2 and that is in grid column 1. So now the idea is to extract this grid and this stack panel into a user control. The column definitions that we defined on the root grid are only needed in this main window for this stack panel and for this grid, as this one is dynamically moved into grid column 2 when the user clicks the Move button. The column definitions are not needed by all the other elements. To put these two into a user control, you have to ensure that you also have the column definitions in that user control. To make this very simple, you can create here another grid that contains these 2 elements and that defines the column definitions. Then the code allows you to just copy the new grid with the customer list and with the customer details into a user control. Now let's do this. So let's scroll up to the root grid of this main window. From here I cut all 3 column definitions. Now let's scroll down again to the customer list and to the customer details. Let's create here a grid and let's put it into grid row 2. Into this grid, let's paste the column definitions that I cut from the root grid. Now let's cut here the closing grid element and let's paste it after the stack panel for the customer details. Let me press Ctrl KD to format this code. Now you have created another grid that contains just these 2 elements that are needed to show the customers. Now here on the stack panel, you don't need grid row 2 anymore because the parent grid doesn't define any row definitions and it is now the parent grid that is in grid row 2 of the root grid of the main window. Also on this one, grid row 2 is not needed anymore. Now this means that you have here actually a grid for the customer view. I press Ctrl KC to add this as a comment. So now we have one place that represents the part for the customers, and you can extract this into a user control. Before we do this, let's clean up the rest of the SAML code. On the status bar, you don't need that grid column span anymore because you haven't defined any columns on the root grid. Now let's scroll up, and also on the header control, you don't need to set the grid column span property. Then also on the menu, grid column span is not needed anymore. Now the root grid also looks very clean, it has just these 4 row definitions. Let's run the application and let's see if everything still works. Yes, everything works the same. Let's try the Move button, also this works as before. In the next clip, let's extract this part into a user control.